Waterfall, the CCW podcast.
Hello and welcome to Waterfall. It's a water saving podcast brought to you by CCW. That's the Consumer Council for Water. I'm Mike. I'm here with Karen. Hi, Karen.
Hello, Mike.
And producer Tom.
Hi.
Tom.
Hello, everyone. Hi, both.
So we've got a great episode all about smart metering coming up, and it is a controversial topic. People have opinions on smart metering, and maybe your opinion will be changed when you hear our guest, who's John Lillistone, who is the director of water at Arqiva, and they make smart meters, as far as I understand. Is that right, Karen?
And responsible for the establishing the network and working with water companies to help them set up their systems, etc. So
like the rollout of smart meters.
Yeah, so it's going to be a really interesting and hopefully insightful interview. I think there's a degree of myth busting as well that John's been able to provide, which I think is going to be really helpful as well.
So John will be along in just a minute, so stay tuned to find out all about smart metering. Before we start though, Karen, I just want to check in with you about whether you've been watching the TV recently.
Yes.
Good. Yeah, it's a good start. And have you been watching Just One Thing, the late Michael Mosley programme that they've just put out a couple of new episodes that were recorded prior to his very unfortunate death?
Yes, no, I did see that actually, yes.
So, well, you will have noticed my favourite thing cropped up. Cold showers. And we've talked about this a number of times on Waterfall, that cold showers can bring about a whole number of health benefits, of which Michael Mosley was very vocal about and very positive. Yeah. That was something he was doing himself. So I just want to flag, you can check out that. The episodes are on iPlayer. So we weren't just pushing it as some flight of fancy,
No.
It was an actual thing. Have you adopted them yet, Karen?
Well, I have to say I haven't. I mean, have you?
Well, during the summer, I like to have cold showers after I've been on a run, but I don't regularly do them on we're now October.
We're in the depths of October right now, yeah.
And weather's taking a turn. So I'm avoiding cold showers at all costs. So maybe I need to reconsider my own life choices. Tom, have you ever had a cold shower by choice?
Never by choice. The boiler broke. I've recently moved into my first home. The boiler broke about 6 months ago. I endured them for about a week. And I appreciated that I was helping the planet and helping my ecosystem.
Very good.
Yes. I was miserable the entire 30 seconds.
But
I was
healthier for it.
I suppose so, yes, but bitter as well.
Right. So before we jump into smart metering, let's just remind our guests that you can get in touch. Remind our listeners. Listeners. Well, to be fair, I do view our listeners as guests. And in fact, Tony V has been a listener that has been a guest.
Yeah, he's a hybrid.
He has? Yeah. About time we got him back on. But let's remind our listeners that you can get in touch.
You can email us at podcast@ccwater.org.uk.
Very good, and we're on the socials.
We're on the socials at CCW Voice. You find us on Twitter, on Instagram. And again, as I always say, Mike, go back through the archive. You can have more than 24 hours of Waterfall uninterrupted.
Oh, it's way more than that.
I think it's like 30 odd,
yeah. It's way more, yeah. I mean, literally, you can waste days of your life. You can. So, extensive back catalogue, please do check it out. But look, let's bring on our guest.
This podcast is brought to you by CCW, the voice for water consumers.
It's a great pleasure to welcome John Lillistone, who's Director of Water at Arqiva, to Waterfall. Hiya, John.
Hi, Mike. Hi, Karen. How are you both?
Yeah, we're really looking forward to talking to you about smart metering. It's a really important topic to cover because we know it's something that people are really interested in. So let's just orientate the listeners. Just to start with, what exactly is a smart meter and how does that differ from the more traditional meters?
Yeah, look, it's a great place to start. And the minute you hear the word smart, everybody thinks different things, right? So where we are, I think as most of the listeners will know, is just over half the UK have a meter of some description. The vast majority of those are called visual read meters. People have to walk up to them, lift the lid if it's underground, and write down the numbers. Over the last 10 years or so, a number of water companies have been installing the first version of Smart. And those meters store their reads. And when you walk past them or drive past them, as long as you're quite close and you're not moving too fast, it will transfer the reads to it, and then you can take them back and you can load them into a system and look at the information. The best example by a long way of that is the work that United Utilities have done. They twigged that if you put the reading equipment on bin lorries, well, bin lorries drive down every street, don't they? And they're quite slow. So great piece of work there. And other companies have deployed quite a few of those. Where the industry's going is the next version. And this is also sort of part of the directives and the instructions and guidance from Ofwat. So that moves that short range connection and the need to drive slowly past with a permanent connection over a fixed network. So a network like a mobile network, like a Wi-Fi network, that sits there all the time and constantly takes those reads in from the meter. So that's the version that Ofwat are encouraging everybody to look at. There is an acronym. We love our acronyms. They're called AMI meters. It stands for Advanced Metering Infrastructure. Basically means permanently connected meters.
Right. And just for our listeners, Ofwat are the water regulator.
Yes.
The water companies very much obsess over what Ofwat say and do.
Perhaps you could explain to us a little bit about what the main benefits are to having the smarter meters in place.
Yeah, I think we'll come on to a little bit more about this in a bit, but the biggest benefit is customer engagement. At the moment, most people get a bill twice a year from their water company. It's probably explained in terms of you've used this amount of megalitres, and bluntly, the cost of water in this country compared to all of the costs as homeowners and renters that we're exposed to is relatively minor. So it doesn't really get much focus or much engagement. You're much more likely to engage with your water company if you've got a leak and there's water running down your street or running into your house. The engagement around your consumption, your behaviour regarding water, doesn't really feature very highly on most people's sort of internal priority list. You know, are you going to be able to heat your home? You're going to be able to buy food? You're going to be able to look after your friends and family? And somewhere in that stack, and unfortunately relatively low, is water. So how can smart meters help you do that engagement? I've already explained the reads come over the network pretty much. It depends on the technology, and this isn't about the technology. They come through at least daily, sometimes more frequently. That can be explained to the customer. Things like really simple things like you're using way much more than the average, and start to make people think about what's going on, what they're doing, what is it in their behaviours that is right, what is wrong, what can be improved, what can be changed. And certainly the regulator have identified that having smart meters directly addresses two of the key metrics that they measure water companies by. The first one is leakage, and the second one is personal consumption. Personal consumption is an estimate of how much per person per day you use. Those figures are regularly published. There's a target that we've all got in the industry to get to. And leakage is, unfortunately, between taking the water out of the natural environment, either capturing it or dragging it out of rivers and streams, cleaning it up to some of the highest standards in the world. That's something the industry should be incredibly proud of. Shipping it to your home, and then within your home, you using it, we lose 20 to 30% of it. And smart meters can really help with identifying where that is. First off, is it in your home? Within 24 to 48 hours of having the smart meter fitted, you can identify whether that home has a leak. You can identify how much that leak is. And in terms of customer engagement, you can tell the customer how big that leak is. And if you want, you can tell them how much it's costing them. It also allows you to look at the distribution network, the big pipes that come from the water treatment, that break down to smaller pipes, that come into your area, and then eventually into your home. There's various points on that network that have meters fitted. Yeah, some of them very small, like your home, some of them very large. If they're all smart, what you can do is say the amount of water going into this area is X from the big meter. You will know from the small meters in people's homes and property and businesses how much is going out of the network. Anything that is a difference is being lost. So in terms of being able to identify leakage, it's a critical data point that allows that really efficient management, and we can drive those figures down. In terms of PCC, so this is the per capita consumption. That's how much you use as an individual. It's a bit more difficult. I said earlier on that you can look at how much you're using once you've got a smart meter and compare it. Well, one of the things that nobody knows is how many people are in a house or in a flat. So you're not able to say definitively your consumption is 400 litres today. Unless I know how many people are in that property, I don't know what that per person measure is. So there's a bit of a reliance and some clever tricks that can be done to encourage people to share that information, primarily around privacy and security. But also there's some things that can be done to nudge behavior in the right direction. Smart metering provides some critical data points, both for consumers, because having a leak in your house, as well as wasting water, is probably doing damage to your house. But equally, from the water company's perspective, being able to isolate and focus on where they've got leaks across their distribution network. So we can get this 20 to 30% wastage down.
How easy is it for a customer to find out their own consumption when they've got a smart meter installed? So, for example, I can go on an app right now and tell you what my energy consumption is. Will you get that with smart meters?
Some of our customers are already doing that, and they're exposing either on a web page or through, as you said, Mike, an app, information that says your consumption today was X in comparison, and you can run all sorts of comparisons. Today is better than yesterday. You've told us how many people are in the property, so your per capita consumption, your per person consumption is going up, coming down, and you've got a leak, and that leak is of this number of litres per minute, and it's costing you this many pounds, shillings and pence. I've just given away my age there. That's already being done. I think it's an area of huge benefit if it can be more widely adopted. Some of the work that we've done on what's called nudge theory, which is how you can engage and how you can encourage. One of the big learnings in other territories about energy usage is we are all by nature quite competitive. So I was talking to a colleague the other day and saying, in certain places, for example, in America, Street A gets told that their energy consumption is better or worse than Street B. So you start creating this competition between local communities to be the best they can. So it's really interesting. And look, when we were setting this up, Tom and I had a conversation about the demographic of the people listening to this. And I was really encouraged when he shared what it is. Unfortunately, and I'm representative of this, right? Middle-aged male, white. I'm in a position where particularly the value of water isn't that important to me. I care passionately about it. Don't get me wrong. I wouldn't be doing this job if I wasn't. But the future is our children and the people entering home ownership and renting now, and they absolutely care passionately about this, not from the financial point of view, but the environmental point of view. The more water we're taking out of the rivers and streams, the worse they get. Yeah, the more energy that we take in cleaning it up, the more carbon emissions. Utilities across the piece is 11% of the UK's carbon emissions. Yeah, that's a huge contributor. And we commissioned some work a couple of years ago that said if everybody had a smart meter and everybody was able to gain the sorts of benefits that the customers who've deployed them now are getting, what would that do in reducing the carbon emissions? And the answer came back 0.5%. We went, that's not really impressive. And they said, no, you don't understand. 0.5% of the whole of the UK's carbon emissions. And, you know, that younger demographic, the minute you start talking about those sorts of benefits to the UK, they get incredibly engaged.
A couple of times you've mentioned cost and the relative cost of water compared to other utilities. I just wanted to flag that our research, CCW's research, shows quite consistent pattern that around 1 in 5 people are struggling with their water bill. So I think that dimension is certainly growing, and with future water bills looking set to rise quite substantially, that issue of water affordability is only going to grow. So it feels to me, it certainly seems to me, that the evidence is pointing towards an extra dimension of relevance as well, of having that handle on the cost.
You're totally right. And if my earlier comments diminished the importance of cost, then that's a mistake. It was more about the relative stack, where it fits in the relative stack of what each and every person in this country is facing today. It's not at the top. Yeah. And I don't think we necessarily want it at the top, right? But it is rising up that list without a shadow of a doubt. And certainly I agree with your research. It is a significant concern for an increasing number of people.
One of the issues that we hear bubbling under from a customer point of view is a bit of noise about smart metering, a little bit of uncertainty. Are there any sort of common misconceptions that you hear that you would just like to clear up?
Yeah, look, at Arqiva, and I don't know how many of the audience will know this, we obviously have a significant presence in water smart metering. We also run the energy smart metering network for the north of England. And I think there's a number of concerns that the energy sector has heightened, rightly or wrongly. And a lot of that relates to mandated installation. Can I refuse? Can I not accept one for whatever reason? And that varies in the water industry about whether there's mandatory rights granted as part of their license or not. And we see a lot of concerns about, is it actually going to prove effective? Is it more things that I'm going to have to give away from a privacy point of view? Am I going to have to tell you? Do I have to tell you how many people are in the building? And the answer is you don't. You may want to, because it gives you the ability to empathetically engage with the information. And there's lots that can be done in that particular space. For example, saying that data is never transferred out of, if we use your example, Mike, the app. It's just held in the app and it goes nowhere else. There's no need for it to go anywhere else, right? And then we certainly see disruption, leaks, so coming in and fitting a meter where there wasn't a meter, particularly on internal installs in blocks of flats, and where the meter's under the kitchen sink. Is it going to cause a leak? Is it in itself going to damage my property? Concerns about accountability as well, where if there is a leak, where is that leak? Was it caused by fitting the meter? And then, of course, we're putting a device that is connected to a network, a radio network. So we still see a lot of concerns raised around what's the power of that transmission, what frequency does it operate at, is it going to cause health issues, is it going to damage the natural environment? And look, whilst the evidence is that the biggest risk you take with radio frequencies today is using a mobile phone, particularly holding it to your ear, right? Those concerns, there's not enough body of evidence from enough group of people that means that that is still a legitimate concern for a large number of people. We've seen most of the concerns.
Be sure to head back through the archives and check out all the past episodes of Waterfall.
So, John, I was in a taxi once, and the taxi driver said, by the way, any story that begins with a taxi driver said, you've got to start going, well, where are you going with this? This just shows what a geek I am. Started talking about water metering. He was talking about the price of water, and I said, why, you should get a meter. And he said, I don't want a meter. They're spying on you. So what would you say to that guy? I mean, this is real. I'm not making this up. That's really what he said. We got into a bit of a spat for about 20 minutes. I wanted the journey to end.
Look, those concerns, whether they're legitimate or not, that's the perception, right? So perception is reality. A water meter is a relatively dumb device. And certainly I will tell you exactly what we see on a smart meter. I see a serial number. I see what the reads are once per hour, and that is it. I have no visibility of where that meter is. I have no understanding of which property it's associated with, let alone who is the bill payer at that property. Now, that's what I see. The water companies obviously do have that data in terms of they know who they've got to bill. But there is, we spent a long time, 10 years or so ago, when this really started with Thames Water, and then again in the last 5 years with Anglian Water, who've done the biggest rollout of these sorts of smart meters, helping them work with organisations like the Information Commissioner's Office, right, about what is personally identifiable information. And where that conclusion settled in both cases was that taking a meter read once an hour and transmitting that is absolutely sufficient for the water company to identify leaks, but it is insufficient for them to track behaviours of that home. Yeah. So, of course, there's plenty of stories saying, well, you'll be able to tell when I flush the toilet, when I run a dishwasher, when I water the garden. And I just want to come back to watering the garden in a minute. But for example, with Thames Water, the number of leaks identified that they've followed up on, 70% of the water wasted has come from what's called leaky loos. That's not because we're able to say that property has a leaky loo, or it has 2 leaky loos, or whatever. That's because we've been able to say that property has a leak. Thames have followed that up with the homeowner. they've done a survey, they've visited, they've done what is necessary, and the information back is 70% of the loos in this country leak. And there's some really quick and easy things you can do to work out if yours is leaking. But equally, they are capable of leaking over 10 litres an hour. So in excess of 250 litres a day. And understanding that, conceptualizing that is one of the issues, right? Think about, you go to the supermarket in the morning on your way to work and you go, I really want a bottle of water. I want a big bottle of water. That water bottle that bottle that you buy will be 750 millilitres or 1 litre. Stick that on your desk. Think about looking at it now. Now stack up 200 to 250 of them. And that's potentially what is going down the back of your toilet and you don't even know about it. That's why we've got to fix this.
I mean, you're absolutely right. It's a phenomenal amount of water, and most people are just blissfully unaware that it's happening. I mean, it is something that we've talked about before on Waterfall, and how important addressing those sorts of issues are. I wonder, picking up your point about the follow-up that companies can provide in terms of practical support and help. Are you satisfied that the companies are geared up to be able to provide that support?
I think it's a huge challenge, Aaron. And a lot of it is about their approach to smart metering. Some of them, for a variety of reasons, come at it from, this is the best opportunity we have to engage our customers. Those ones are constantly thinking about, what's the messaging we want to deliver? How can we make it better? How can we make it clearer? How can we help our customers visualize what is going on? Others are coming at it from the perspective of, this is more of an internal benefit where we are getting rid of meter readers, or we don't need people reading meters anymore. And that's a huge benefit, potentially operationally, to them. But we need to help the industry and the consumers move from that position much more to, this is the best customer engagement tool that you will have. Yeah, at the moment, the vast majority of people get a bill twice a year, as I said earlier. Suddenly you can be in contact with them in near real time every single day. The challenges that brings are huge. Think about the customer teams today, the ones that are on the phone sending out the letters. Yeah, that organization is driven by typically 2 contacts a year. When you move that 2 contacts a year to potentially 2 contacts a day, how do you make that efficient such that the costs don't balloon through the roof? Yeah. And that's where some of the more, clever technical solutions can really, really help.
On the topic of engagement with consumers, particularly related to the rollout, we saw in our annual complaints report that we published that there was a uptick in complaints, quite a big uptick in complaints related to metering and smart metering rollout. So my question, John, is about your experience from what you've seen. What's the magic ingredients to ensure that rollout is done in a way that means people welcome smart meters rather than see them as a threat?
Yeah, it's a really, really good question, Mike. And I think, from what we've seen, from what we've learned, and what we're building into what we'll be doing in the future, that there's a few critical things. The one is there needs to be an education. And that education needs to be on the benefits that it will give the consumer, right? And it needs to be prolonged and in advance before you get anywhere near people in high-vis jackets turning up on your street, right? So we're going to be deploying smart meters. The benefit that you will get from smart meters is that you'll be able to see what your usage is. We will help you compare that. We will be able to identify where you've got a leak. We'll be able to, in some cases, help you fix that leak. Yeah. And then it's more into and they're coming to your area in 3 months' time. Yeah. They're coming to your area next week, right? And backing that up and making it consistent. So I think for me, the critical thing is that you stand up to your promises. So if you say you're going to install it on a date, you install it on a date. You make it very, very clear whether the customer needs to be there, and the whole appointment booking. Our experience across energy, where nearly all of the installs require customer booking, customer appointment, customer permission, there is a significant failure rate. And we contributed some of that to the recent report that Baringa did on behalf of Ofwat that highlighted that as a big issue. The other thing that you need to do is make sure they work. The worst possible experience is we're installing your smart meter and you're going to have all this wonderful data and we're going to help you with all of this, this and this, and then it doesn't work. And, you know, touching back on that very same Baringa report for Ofwat, that they've identified that was a big mistake made in the energy rollout, where installation was prioritized over function and performance. And what we're seeing in the current cycle of setting the rules for the next regulatory period is the regulators clearly have spoken together. They've looked at what are the best practices, and what we're seeing in the water industry is that a smart meter will only work when it's smart. Yeah, there is no point in installing a smart meter if it becomes dumb. So I think there's an importance on standing up to your promises, including that it works. And then there's a continued education period afterwards. This is what it's telling you. One of the customers we work with, their biggest response rate is to what they call a household comparison. Yeah, and that's a simple document that explains this is where you are. This is where people similar to you are. This is where other people in your area are. And it's all about trying to help the customer relate their behaviors to the consumption of water. So it is a lot of things need attention, need continued attention, both before and after you get the smart meter delivered and installed in the ground.
That makes a lot of sense, John. And I'm encouraged by the fact that you have identified that kind of recipe for success there, because we're faced with a big expansion of smart meters over the next, not just the next 5 years, but beyond that. And from a consumer point of view, you want that to be done in a way that is a positive experience, not one that is a horrible one from the customer point of view. So I'm encouraged that actually you've got that recipe there, and actually it's a matter of trying to make that stick so that the rollout's done in a really thoughtful way that has the customer, real people front of mind. So yeah, thank you for that. I'm conscious that we're very much running out of time on this episode of Waterfall. Karen, I think we need to get your very important question in as well.
Yes, John. We ask all our guests whether they know what their own personal water use is. I'm presuming you are on a meter.
And of course, I do know exactly how much my consumption is. I wouldn't feel credible doing what I do if I didn't. Karen, you're absolutely right. I am on a meter. I'm very lucky. I live in the Thames Water region. I'm equally lucky that in the last year, my meter has turned smart. So actually, I get to see how much I'm using every hour of every day, which is fascinating and has caused a number of fairly heated conversations amongst the household. But to answer your question, if we bring it back to the per capita consumption, how much per person, I have to say my usage is a little bit above both the national average of 140.3 litres. It's actually above the Thames Water average of 140.4 litres per person today. And I'm slightly ashamed to finally admit that mine is 186 litres per person per day.
What are you doing with all this water, George?
I know. The interesting thing is, in preparation for this call, I went and, what's the polite phrase? Made myself comfortable before this event, and I did notice that I have a dripping tap in the bathroom. So that is Saturday's task for me. That's going to be eradicated. I don't think it's quite going to account for that leak, for that amount of overconsumption. So I probably need to go and pay attention to some other things.
All I would suggest, John, is you might like to visit our website, because we've got some really great tips and advice on how you can reduce your water use on our website. So, it would really be worth you having a look, I think.
I think, and it probably provides much better options than evicting my son, who seems to spend his entire life in the shower, but a little bit more humane.
John, thank you so much for sharing with us. It's been really fascinating having you on. And telling us all about smart meters, and I think there's some really clear messages coming through there for us, and for people listening. Smart metering is a massive opportunity. It's not something to be feared. Thank you for coming on. I hope you've enjoyed your waterfall experience.
I have. It's been wonderful. Thank you.